Thanks for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about animation at Valve, animation on Dota 2, and specifically the variety of ways in which animators interact with and shape Dota 2 as a product.
Hello everyone, I'm Dan Rosas-Paulsen and I'm an animator at Valve. I've been working on the Dota team since 2.5 years ago, and I've been at Valve for at least 3.5. Before joining Valve, I used to be an indie developer working on a game called Aerospace Program, and there I learned the whole grasp of the pipeline, which was really useful for me in order to understand what to do and what not to do in a game and how to explore different ideas. And when I joined Valve, I just noticed that everything was, in a sense, the essence was the same. You needed to figure out how to solve problems and how to figure out which are the problems that you need to solve, and they need to be really important for the product that you're working on. So that was really valuable.
My name is Christine Phelan, and I'm also an animator at Valve, and I've been working with Valve since 2011 for over 10 years. I started on Dota back in 2011, and then since then I've worked on a variety of our products, most recently shipping Half-Life Alyx. Prior to that, I got my start in the industry in 2007 and had the pleasure of working for Double Fine Productions and LucasArts. And then throughout my career, I have worked on a bunch of commercials and short films, and so I've had a pretty broad opportunity in terms of my animation diet and the kinds of projects that I've gotten to work on. And I get to continue having that really broad scope of work at Valve and on Dota.
On any given game project at Valve, animators are usually involved in the development process from early conceptualization through to final execution. Whether it's a game like Portal, where the animation is limited to a few but impactful characters, or Left 4 Dead, where you have literally surrounded by a swarm of zombies, the breadth of work is exciting because of its opportunities for creativity and variety.
And our work isn't isolated to gameplay animation or implementation either, although that is a significant part of the work that we do. It includes everything from promotional work for Steam or cinematic sequences that announce new products or gameplay events. Animators also work closely with software engineers at the company to improve our proprietary tools and to maximize the efficiency of our workflow, since we are actually a pretty small animation team at about 18 animators. And that's 18 animators company-wide, all of whom are spread across multiple products at various stages of development.
So that's a long way of saying that at Valve, we are always producing a wide range of animated content. This requires us to approach problems with a product-level thinking and to be proactive about extending our individual reach in ways that allow us to be efficient with our time and also giving us a creative flexibility. But of all the products at Valve, Dota 2 is the one where the widest variety of animation exists. Just a little bit about Dota. Dota 2 is an online multiplayer game that has been around for over a decade, and as we do with our products, we updated Dota regularly through Steam, which allow us to provide everything from small bug fixes to product-wide gameplay balancing patches on a regular basis to our customers. This includes adding entirely new playable characters to the hero roster, seasonal game modes, and other complete overhauls to how players interact with the game and one another.
And in a multiplayer game like Dota 2, a big part of having a good experience is provided by other players. Our customers generate a huge amount of value for each other just by participating in the game, and one way that players do this is through the Dota 2 Workshop. This is a set of software utilities that are available as a free download and allows players to create cosmetic items for the Dota store and the Steam Workshop, as well as their own custom games. The community's engagement through the workshop and by creating short films using the SFM is a major part of the spirit and the identity of the product.
One of Dota 2's most notable features is the size of its roster, which has a cast of over 100 unique playable heroes of all different shapes and sizes, as well as dozens of other NPC types seen throughout the map at any given point in time. So as an animator, it's really interesting to get this very wide pool of heroes in which we can play some characteristics and personalities.
So the Dota 2 roster is always expanding as we add new heroes. And the importance of balancing for gameplay and cosmetic designs and animation against what already exists in terms of at-a-glance readability, silhouette, and creating items that players value is one of the many challenges that animators have when creating content for Dota 2. But we also have a lot of animation opportunities. And there's everything from in-game animations that the player interacts with directly as they play a match, the short vignettes and dashboard panels where we feature new heroes and show what's exciting about them and get players excited to play with them. And finally, our short films, which have historically been a vehicle for announcing new heroes that are being added to the product, but have recently expanded to include teasers to generate excitement for upcoming in-game events and gameplay modes, which also features some fan-favorite heroes.
So how do we define work in a team at Valve? We usually call these teams cabals, which are a cross-discipline group in which all members are collaborating on a single task, emphasizing that this is a small and agile group in which the player is the driver of the decision-making. It's ultimately more about the quality of the end product than one person's particular contribution to it. Given that these groups are intentionally small and feature-driven, this idea that you bring to the tables matters at the final result. The animation team size in Dota in 2020 was around 9 animators and between 1 or 2 TDs. These team members are usually spread out through the many features being worked on and ship regularly. We also try to have some flexibility when some work needs more time, and there is some amount of overlap within the schedule in which the features that were being worked on. So we start working on what feature, and at the same time we can already start working on some concepting or some modeling for the next one. And as soon as that's ready, we jump into the next one to keep everything well-oiled and constantly ready to ship.
So on Dota, idea generation is pretty omnidirectional or nonlinear. And it really democratizes who within the group and within the cabal can contribute what. Since we organize in these small multidisciplinary groups and work on our tasks in parallel with one another, feedback comes from all disciplines at all stages in the task that we're working on. And so a wide variety of eyes are on the work that we're doing very early in the process, which only makes the end result stronger.
One of the most important things that anyone can do when working on Dota is playtesting. Part of an animator's responsibility, and not only in Dota but also at Valve in general, is to identify areas of improvement through regular playtesting of our products, and it's a crucial part of the process. Solutions are arrived via consensus. For example, good animation ideas can come from sound artists, or good character design feedback can come from gameplay programmers. The capacity to be self-critical and responsive, and to iterate based on feedback from peers is really critical. There are so many elements in the game that are interacting with the work that we do, and we have to consider our decisions at a product level, rather than isolated to a specific factor that we're working on.
And since no one task has a prescribed way of accomplishing it, a cabal for any work being done on Dota tends to form a feature. Whether it's gameplay, cinematics work, or an event-specific character feature, these tasks are worked on by those who are interested in doing the work, have strong ideas for a concept, or are the best suited based on their skills. We also look for storytelling opportunities that we can give to players who are interested in connecting with their favorite heroes, or learning more about the lore within the world of Dota throughout the product. And there's often overlap between cabals in terms of individual content creators who are working on them, meaning any one animator can be touching multiple features at once. This overlap, what it does is it allows us to dynamically integrate ideas into our work that we do across multiple features, as well as maintain kind of a bird's eye view of the tasks that are being done overall. And so this is especially important as we have no true managers at Valve administering tasks or on Dota, and it's really important that we all communicate with each other and organize around an agreed upon schedule. The major categories we will be focusing our discussion around today are how we approach working on arcanas, personas, immortal items, and we'll spend some time talking about the 2020 event game mode Aghanim's Labyrinth and its promotional short film.
So let's talk a little bit more about arcanas. What is an arcana? An arcana is an item bundle that usually includes the following: a whole new remodel, a new set of animations, new particle effects, new sound effects, new voiceover, and additional voice lines. As a Dota 2 player, you usually like one hero more and work hard on improving your skills within the game, using that one hero. Arcanas include a new challenge for the players, in the form of a minigame that unlocks a second style. For example, the games that do need to play with Wraith King, you must kill 100 enemy heroes in the game to unlock the second style. For Queen of Pain, you must torment 1000 enemies with her Sonic Wave ability, and lastly for Wind Ranger, you must deal 2.5 million in damage using Focus Fire. There is no time limit to complete these mini-quests, but it's up to the player to do that and to show it in the game. For example, if you play as Wraith King and you unlock the second style, you will be showing in the game that you are the only one and true king using the Arcana. Let's talk a little bit more about the Queen of Pain, which was one of the first Arcanas that we shipped. It was the Wraith King, then Queen of Pain, and lastly Wind Ranger. For the early phases, when we were deciding what to do, we were exploring the concepting and playing around with ideas and constraints. An Arcana usually plays a role in a fantasy that we find interesting or appealing to the hero based on her lore, or based on some ideas that have been running around the team. In this example, Queen of Pain's lore, she was used as a starting point for the Arcana. Her name, Akasha, used to be a queen that was enslaved by the king of Els, And this version depicts her more as a queen of that time before she was banished into the realms of the king. She is powerful, dangerous, seducing, and she inflicts pain for her own pleasure in this version. She's a semi-realistic biped. She has a skirt, she has a demon's tail, she has fantasy wings, she has a whip. So you can check the box on all the things that will make this a complex animation character, which was really fun to work with and experiment, because at the very end we had to find a convincing way to keep the essence of the base hero, but bring over the new elements that will make it compelling and interesting. As we see some of the animations that cover the abilities, we will find that the basic set of animations cover locomotion, idles, runs, and different variations. These ability animations, which are usually 4 depending on the hero, require more or less depending on their abilities and the item upgrades. Some of these abilities tend to be passive or not. In this case, the Queen of Pain, everything required an animation which range from the 10 frames to the 20-30 frames. So they're really short and concise, and they need to show a little bit of personality. There's additional secondary motions like afflictions, teleports, death sequences, and so on, that are part of the base but not necessarily needed when you're thinking about an injured state, for example. Additionally, we create flavor animations like special runs with sound effects and visual effects tied into the Arcana's fantasy, and these new animations are tied into the minigame usually. One of her early explorations for Queen of Pain was that she was always flying, but at the end the team decided as a consensus that it would be better suited for her to run and then use the flying as a variation with effects that bring over that fantasy of the wings that's not necessarily shown on the base model. Feedback and iterations is key here, because Arcana is built on top of that existing hero, and it must remain consistent in the way it attacks and the way it portrays the gameplay experience.
So with most of the newer character side work that we do, such as the Arcanas, Personas, or entirely new heroes, we feature them in a takeover page that we call their debut page. These act as a quick and splashy introduction to that character and gives us some space to explore their personality in ways that are not always available in an in-game context. This page is a dual-purpose location to identify the ways in which they've been updated in addition to their in-game experience, but also it gives us a dedicated place to explore who they are and how they fit into the Dota universe through animation and storytelling. As we discussed earlier, an Arcana is meant to be the kind of peak version of whatever character we're creating a set for, and the ultimate execution on that hero. A Persona, however, is an opportunity for us to completely reimagine an existing hero. So effectively, a Persona item acts as an alternative universe version of a hero when you choose to play as them in-game. To go into more depth, we'll be talking about creating Wei, the persona for the anti-mage. And there's a lot of challenges when creating a persona. It's a delicate balance between making this character fresh and attractive to the player, but not a complete abandonment of the original design or disrespectful to players who have invested a lot of their time and energy into who these characters are and how they play. In a sense, Dota is like a game of icebergs, where we have deep subsurface lore that lies beneath these little peaks that poke out from above the surface of the water, and those little peaks are basically who you get to experience of these characters while playing them in game. And with the anti-mage persona, what we didn't want to do was deviate from the really quick and aggressive play style that the anti-mage is known for in game, as making significant changes to the character that affect gameplays beyond the scope of what we do with these items. So here we sought to identify her as a person unique to the original anti-mage, a foil to who he is while still believably associated with him. And so she was designed to be his student. And playing the game only says so much about the Dota world, and the audience has always been excited for us to make the world much larger than it is from the top-down view. And this drives a lot of our decision-making and product development strategies, and is effectively one of our key pillars, and informs us when we make the shorts, personas, and in particular their debut pages. And for this persona debut page, our goal was to find a balance between environmental storytelling that would reward players for lingering with background elements that would reveal hints of the anti-mage's order, but also reveal how her personality differs from her mentor. Where the anti-mage is measured and sure in his purpose, Wei is just starting out on her journey. She's not naive, but is at the very beginning. She's an athletic, first-time Olympian, basically eager to hit the battlefield, but with all training, there are some aspects of it that we excel at and others that we struggle with. And so Wei is ready for action, but what she's not really great at is meditating. And so for her animated introductory sequence, what we wanted to do was have her emerge, ready to go, and then have to sit down and meditate for a while, and then spend a bunch of time fidgeting and struggling with finding that quiet inside in order to do so. And so for this animated introductory sequence, we started with really rough layout in Maya, Often we do this before the characters even finish being built. And the goal at this stage is to create a really basic but communicative animation on a cube in a very primitive set to establish the scale of the space, the speed at which the camera is moving through it, and how we're going to tell the story and frame the important elements. This is blocked out up front so that environment art, set dressing, and lighting can begin, those folks can begin work in tandem with us to help guide the ultimate version of the sequence. And so there's a lot of iteration, like we talked about earlier, happening where lighting is informing how I stage the camera, and the effects are informing where set dressing elements are placed. And so once we have the character model available, there are inevitably timing and camera adjustments as we build the details of the action, like some extra hang time to show her feet tucking beneath her while she's in midair, time for her to settle on the ground, and then some placeholder final landing pose while we wait for the dialogue to be recorded, which roughly accounts for the expected duration and attitude of that line. In this shot, her hair and trailing cloth bits are only roughly posed, since they will be driven mostly by your in-game cloth system once the sequence is finally running a game. So all of that acts as a way for us to understand the scale of the space and a way for us to help the environment artists build out what that space eventually looks like. And so while this animation work is happening, we're also collaborating directly with other artists to find the best visual elements to succinctly tell the story of this character, considering everything from lighting the set to the tone, the set dressing and environmental shapes to help act as a foundation for their personality and their culture, and to help frame the action in an appealing way. And so once this is all complete, we have a final in-game debut sequence with sounds, effects, and lighting, and all the set dressing elements are in place. And once we're here, players can actually linger as long as they like, whether they're going through the HUD elements on the side to learn more about Wei and what her personality and background is, or to spend some time watching her animate and walk through some of the lines that we've set up. For our recent cinematic work and for this debut page, we've actually been partnering with a group called the Lost Cosmonauts, who are arguably the best SFM content creators in the world and have been deeply invested in Dota characters and lore. And so just as much as we rely on their expertise as artists, they're equally as knowledgeable about Dota 2 as a product. And so with their help, they've been great partners in helping us to show how our characters fit into the world and make it feel richer.
Besides what we covered so far, there was more content in 2020 that was shipped throughout the year. Immortal Items are another important part of the animator's tasks. Animators are usually involved in rigging, simulation setup, and animation of these items. It's important to note that these are playtested constantly, since they require a new set of effects and animations that have to override an ability and to show it in a different way and more exciting way for the players. These are tied to a hero, and we need to see that everything fits together with the base hero or with other items that we have already shipped before.
And lastly, we're going to talk about the 2020 event game mode and the animated short film made to support it, Aghanim's Labyrinth. Historically, these short films have been new hero announcements and recently have expanded to cinematic storytelling that ties gameplay events and new features to the Dota 2 world. As with all of our work, these short films have a very fluid production process. Some of them start with an animator scruffing something together in a 3D animatic straight within SFM or Maya from the outset. Sometimes it's a mix of 2D and 3D storyboards. And sometimes it's literally just a collection of video reference that we start putting together to capture the feel and the attitude of the story that we want to tell. The short films are ultimately driven by content creators on the actual game team. And they're basically people who are the most intimately aware of the product and the best suited to help us guide the story. So all of these different previs approaches are just to solve individual problems, whether it's cameras and spatial storytelling, effects treatments that we want to try. We do this anticipating any challenges that we think will come along, but using the workflow that we are most comfortable with as a communication tool. And so it's important to mention that most of this work is done in parallel to all of the other work that we've been covering so far. These storytelling pieces are driven by a couple of team members that have full support of the group and have visibility of the short from a high level. And so while these shorts remain a collaborative feature, as are all things at Valve, this group trusts that the final decisions being made by those who are driving members of the short team will be the best ones made for that piece, since they have a clear picture of the whole production from a bird's eye view.
And tied into the game mode, those same assets, we usually tend to use them everywhere it's possible. So for example, for Aghanim's Labyrinth, which was a cooperative roguelike mode in which you teamed up with 3 other players to beat the hordes of enemies inside Aghanim the Wise's domains. We used Aghanim, the same model that we used for the trailer, we used it for the game. And since he was the final boss, we used a new set of animations that had to come in with the game mode. This included different abilities and skills that were explored and tested throughout the whole development process. So we had to do a few mock-ups and try them, and if they worked, then we would expand further and create final and polished animation sequences. But at the very beginning, we just had to get something in there so that the gameplay designers were able to test how this final boss would feel. and then try a different couple of ideas within the game. What's important about this animation set is that it's not as complex as a regular hero, because he's the final boss. He had a defined set of moves that need to be animated. He didn't have to move, it was not controllable by a player, so it was constrained to its own set of rules.
One other important element of working on these animated shorts while simultaneously working on the game mode is often we do not have full clarity on what the game mode is going to be yet. And so what we try to do is we grab elements that capture the spirit and the tone of the game mode without being too explicit in the animated short that we're creating in a way that is descriptive of the game that players are going to play. Rather, what we try to do instead is to get players excited for something new that's coming along and try to communicate the excitement and the attitude of the characters and the expectations of what it will be like to play in that space. This gives the game team freedom to explore different gameplay strategies and different gameplay elements and try to find what's fun about the thing that they've set out to make, while giving us the flexibility, or giving the film team the flexibility to make story decisions that are not unnecessarily constraining the game team and vice versa. Oh, let's talk about 2020, Dan. So, like, for a lot of people, work from home kind of started as this is only going to be 2 weeks, and then it became a month, and now we're about to approach a year. And so a lot of the kind of short-term solutions that people were just using as a stopgap for I've suddenly been sent home and I'm suddenly having to work remotely stopped being enough.
So the fastest way of communicating when we were at the office pre-pandemic was just to go to someone else's desk, tap in the shoulder, and say, hey, look at this, I'm working on this, what do you think? Do you need something else? Or someone would gather a lot of people in one people's desk and one person's desk, and we would look at the work that was being done.
Ultimately, it's to our benefit to have had to adapt to these situations, because what this does allow us to do now is it's increased our ability to kind of separate out tasks and work collaboratively even when we're working remotely.
At the end of the day, it's also challenging to work and play and do everything that you are supposed to do, both productive and for your own enjoyment in your own personal space. So it's kind of hard to just okay, and I'm gonna close Dota from work and I'm gonna open Dota from public and I'm gonna play games, and it just feels like a weird blob of I'm just doing the same thing but now I'm having fun, I think.
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges for me at least has been how do I establish appropriate work-life boundary limitations. The benefit of going into an office is I get to go, I get to work, and then I get to kind of shut that door and turn that part of my brain off. Although I never really turn that part of my brain off, but here it's even more difficult because, as you're saying, Dan, work and play are kind of adjacent to one another physically in a way that's pretty difficult to separate. And so that has also been a bit of a learning curve for I think many of us. Is how do you turn it off, and how do you give yourself this space to leave work at work when work is at home. Animators on the Dota team in particular have this really wide range of things that we get to work on. And it's difficult to get bored when every day you have this new opportunity, whether you're animating a creature with 6 legs, or you're exploring the backstory of a character that players are super excited to learn more about. And from my perspective, at the end of the day, a well-fed animator is a happy animator. And on Dota, we have some of the broadest variety of different animation snacks and treats that we get to work on.
And I find it really satisfying to work on a lot of different tasks that need something to get shipped. It's not just, okay, you need to do the animations and you need to do the idols for these 100 heroes. So we usually have, okay, now we need to put the cloud systems here, now we need to put the animation here, now we need to test it, now we need to break it, now we need to find a new gameplay, now we have 3 new heroes and we need to figure out a way to distribute them within the 9 people that are invested in the team doing animation. And then everybody is full on their plates, and now you need to figure out a way to do it in the best possible way with the amount of human resources that we have available. So it's very interesting, and it's always fun and keeps you on your toes trying to find the best solution in the amount of time that we have to get something exciting out there for the community.
And one of the great things about working with so many animators at once is that each one of us individually has different ideas and thought processes and skill sets that we get to work with and use as we work together and collaborate on tasks. And so at every given point, no matter what I'm working on, I'm learning something, or I'm being inspired by the people that I work with, and I'm constantly growing my library of tools and verbs and the way in which I approach solving problems. And that extends beyond just working with animators. Like at the end of the day, most of who I am actually working with are people in other disciplines. And I think that just makes the work that I do, and ultimately the work that we do together, richer for the different skills that are brought to the table on any given task and any given cabal.
And it's always exciting to work with those animators because there's always something new to learn, and there's always something to look at, and oh, that's how he did it. So.
Well, thank you very much for coming to our talk. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We're always interested to hear from people, and we're always hiring. So if you have any questions about our process, whether it's Dota or Valve, you can reach out to Dan and I, or you can contact us through the Valve animation job page.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Have a wonderful day.
A war is coming, and I will be ready. My emotions are a reflection of my actions, not the driver of them. My blades are an extension of my hands. My hands are an extension of my will. Though, you'd think I'd be getting ready by training, or sharpening my blades, or, doing something other than sitting and trying not to think about anything, which I'm totally screwing up, and... Alright, starting over. My mind is focused. Real focused. Like, really focused. You wouldn't believe how focused I am. Damn it, I lost it. Okay. One more time. I should have brought a book.